So in regards to mapping these 3 extra characters on the tree, these can be a little bit complicated. So if we first look at flagellated sperm, and we think back to what does that mean about transitions, well, flagellated sperm is required for reproduction in the water. And so the ones that are living in the water happen to be green algae, bryophytes, and ferns that reproduce in the water. So they all have a flagellated sperm, but if you were going to map it on here, could you map it here? Well, then you'd have to map a loss up here somewhere. Or you could map them all 3 on the 3 branches that the flagellated sperm have independently evolved. And so in this case, we can't really call it a homology because not everybody from here up has it, and so we would most likely call this analogous or convergent evolution, unless there was a loss somewhere up here. If you look at multicellularity, multicellularity is mostly found, we'll do this in another color, multicellularity is mostly found in angiosperms, gymnosperms, ferns, and bryophytes, but sometimes you'll have green algae that participate in multicellularity. So if we're looking at multicellularity, these guys all have it, so we could put it here as multicellular, but sometimes you get a green algae that will also be multicellular, and so in that case, again, if it's in green algae, you'll see it as an analogy. But for this whole group, bryophytes, ferns, gymnosperms, and angiosperms, multicellularity is a homology for them, but you sometimes get an independent evolution of that in green algae. And the same thing for stomata. Stomata are mostly, and we'll put this in yellow, a derived characteristic of ferns, gymnosperms, and angiosperms when we have these harder bodies, right? So we got to get gas inside. So stomata, you might put them here, but interestingly, bryophytes, about half do have stomata and half don't. So maybe stomata evolved here and is a homology for this whole group, and then some of these guys have lost the stomata, or the stomata in a bryophyte is somehow different and is an analogous feature. And the way we'd have to figure that out is looking at the genetics behind how a stomata has evolved or is formed, or looking at the structure of it. And if bryophytes have a very different stomata than ferns, gymnosperms, and angiosperms, then you would maybe suggest that those in the bryophyte category that do have stomata, it's been independently evolved, so it's an analogy, it's convergence. Whereas if ferns, gymnosperms, and angiosperms all have the same structure, you would call that a homology.